Hello.
Get myself set up. I just was reading your article.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I was having a little echo. I'm trying to get that worked. You hear me okay?
Yes, very fine, thanks. And you?
Yeah.
Yesterday I created a bit of a smaller version of the potato head.
Yeah, I saw it. I didn't have a chance to review, but I haven't really gotten into the Go code there, honestly. So this will be a chance if I review that.
Yes, so it was for smaller exercises because I simply created one service for the arms and one for the legs, and made a bit more configurable via environment variables, because I had to adopt it for a course for a university, and therefore.
Cool.
But it's funny because this example I will use outside of Kubernetes, and we'll try to demonstrate kind of a service mesh without Kubernetes. So this could be very funny with console.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
yeah, I've been working on. I mean, I got Catch, Customize, Helm, all those done, but there's one last bug, but I'm gonna move on. I really want to do Argo and Flux, so that's and Captain. I guess I know you all are. I think Captain's pretty cool, so I want to get those practiced. But,
So the Argo and the Flux example would be really cool if we have it in code, because as far as I know, they are currently in only screenshots.
Oh, really? Okay. I love. Yeah, I don't. That's for better or worse. To me, it's never done unless it's in code. So yeah, that's actually Catch was so hard. Don't tell the Shippa folks, but like, it was. Yeah, there were some struggles, mainly with registries, and that actually reflects a little on GitHub because the way that actions and the registry interacts is, especially when you've got Kubernetes in the middle, so you got to get a pull secret in there somehow.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just use your, config JSON.
Yes.
But yeah, that's enough troubleshooting GitHub Actions.
But it's
I worked for Microsoft for a while, so I know what it can be like to troubleshoot their stuff sometimes.
okay, funny that one who worked for Microsoft says this.
No, I don't work for them anymore, so that doesn't count.
So just a second. So two other guys said they will join us, but it doesn't seem so.
It's me, you, and Robert, huh? Robert?
It's actually just pronounced the way you'd think it would be, with no H.
Got it.
Josh, I think you are really quiet, because when Robert started to talk, it got really loud in my room.
I just have a powerful voice.
Yeah, you are a little louder for me too. Let me see. Microphone. I have a different microphone than my speaker. That's part of my troubles. How about this? Any better?
Now it's getting much better.
Okay, now I switched to the speaker on my laptop instead of the webcam.
Okay.
I read your article, Thomas, this morning.
Which one?
That one that you shared a few days ago.
Oh, okay, the one regarding cooperative delivery.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what do you think about it?
I thought it was interesting. I really like the idea of, which this is what I saw you emphasizing, a consistent interfaces for app developers to use infrastructure. This is a theme that I've been pursuing for a little while now. Like, I kind of see Kubernetes and the operator framework and all that kind of stuff as the foundation for the standard API for infrastructure management, so that like app devs can come in and, you know, use the same paradigms to deploy a Mongo database or a Cassandra database or a Kafka topic or, you know, app that Dynatrace observability space. Just it should all be kind of similar. I kind of sense that in your, like, you mentioned that a couple times in there. Yeah, I love that. Actually, I have a diagram and I could show it with you. And that one of the things that has made me think of, and I wanted to bring up maybe in this meeting, is just as a challenge, is like, is serverless a mode of cooperative? Is that like the ultimate? Like, is there like I was even thinking there's like a continuum almost from the serverful data center till you get all the way up to the serverless layer. Is that like, hey, I don't even know there's infrastructure here. I just use an API and get what I need. So that was a challenge I was going to mention to you. One thing in the article that I was a little disagreeing with, I'm not sure, is that you kind of say that Kubernetes itself or the cluster itself is static, like should be pre-configured and just share the contracts, which I guess it's okay. Like I would definitely want to see that all encoded and the contracts or whatever encoded somewhere. You know, and then so then it's not quite as static. So that I might be being pejorative by saying static, but you know, maybe a little more flexibility. The infrastructure stuff was, or a little more dynamism there at the cluster level might fit.
Yes, I agree with this at some point. So the Kubernetes cluster itself is not very static. So the nodes change, come, go, and whatever. Yeah. But the object itself is more or less there all the time. Especially when you're working with production systems or whatever. At least in my landscape.
The control plane itself is always there.
Sorry?
What do you say? The control plane itself is always there?
Yes.
Before you come in? Yeah.
So the nodes and so on, they are obviously not static. So everything changes and they can't go. And if you work with preemptible nodes and whatever, they go a bit more than less. What I wanted to achieve with this blog post is that, especially in, let's say in Austria and wherever, people think in silos, and people think there is such thing as an infrastructure team, there is an application development team, and as we all know, often the common sense is we put something over the fence, and I want to do something against this. So the idea I had with this blog post was to give people an idea how such things could look like. So it's for me, it's obvious that a Kubernetes cluster needs maintenance and that it is a separate component. And also the platform itself, which is Kubernetes, and platform components need some kind of care. So let's think about operators, let's think about Istio, let's think about whatever. So you can't say that Istio itself belongs to an application or belongs to a microservice.
Yes, yes.
So there are components in your landscape which might belong to many services, but they have to be maintained somewhere. And this was my idea of the whole infrastructure context and so on, where we said, yes, we have infrastructure. This is shared by different teams and so on. And we agree that we have Istio in a version 1.15 or whatever in the control plane. I'm not really aware of the Istio versioning at the moment. So the developers above are using this infrastructure. So they are using the Kubernetes cluster. They might use the service mesh. They might use an OPA and whatever. And they can rely on that there is Istio larger than 0.16, larger than 0.14 running on this cluster. And this and the rest is totally obvious for them, so they can create, let's say, Lambda functions or whatever they need, as long as there are policies on the infrastructure layer for that. Because currently I often see that this is managed by pull requests and managed by, yes, I put something in a repository of infrastructure repository. And this is one of the things we should deal with in this working group. So for me, the perfect time to deploy infrastructure is the time is very short before you deploy the application.
I want to, I mean, if it's okay with you, I'll just comment on, I think what you put the demarc here kind of at the cluster, you said, or maybe higher actually, you said service mesh, OPA, you even said developers could deploy Lambdas. I'll just tell you for sure where I am, they can't, but it should be I do agree that it's probably an infrastructure capability, but I do wonder if there are other places, because I see this like in Flux and Argo, like they emphasize deploying clusters, and I'm like, who are you trying to talk to? Who's the audience? Like, is the application teams also deploying a cluster? I don't even know. Like, no application teams are. We don't find application teams managing their own clusters. I see you shaking your head, Thomas.
Yes,
so we can assume a hypothesis that at a certain demarc point, app devs don't. That the more that's abstracted, the better.
So when you read about microservices and so on, you often see that services such as databases and so on are part of the application itself. So if someone writes an application with a database, the most of the authors think that or say that the application belongs to the database belongs to this. And this was one thing I wanted to point out in this blog post, that the database is not part of the infrastructure below. It's part of the application.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the point. Like, what is? Like, so would also an observability service be part of the application, or a Kafka topic, or
yes,
where is that?
The topic itself would be, so the topic itself would be part of the application, but Kafka itself would be infrastructure service.
Yeah, I hear that.
So this was what I wanted to point out with this blog post.
That's interesting. I've been thinking about the same thing. Like, let's say pipelines. Let's say you want to run Tecton pipelines, whatever kind of pipelines. So people think of that as an app delivery concern. Of course it is, but somebody has to manage the deployment of Tecton. Well, you could have a managed instance, I guess, or you could run it yourself. That's infrastructure. That's a new thing that I've been realizing, the past few weeks, is like, because I'm like, what's DevOps versus infrastructure? And they're really different because the DevOps people are using infrastructure still, just like the application people. It's not like the infrastructure people are the DevOps people. They run Jenkins, the actual servers, and they run, Tecton, the controllers and operators, but they are not the user. That's a different class.
Mm-hmm. So there's one kind of team or part of a company which provides the infrastructure, let's say, yes, the possibility to deploy infrastructure. This could also be operators, this could also be cross-plane and whatever we know. But there's also the other side which consumes exactly this. And this was something I learned in the last few months and weeks. So,
what do you mean by that? Like top-down buy-in?
Sorry?
What are you getting at? You said executives. Like, what do you mean by that? Like, so we need to explain to executives that infrastructure needs to be considered. Like, what is it that with executives? What are you getting at?
I think at some point I think executives are sometimes the smallest problem in this case.
Oh, okay. I thought
you said this might be a problem you could describe to infrastructure guys. And I am an infrastructure guy, so which shifted to the application world, to the application ops world. So and I think some people have to should learn this, or should at least consider such a way of working, and giving up some control, but doing control via policies and not via pull requests. Because if I as an application developer, I would need some kind of infrastructure. The only thing I need is some kind of policy which allows me to do so.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you're saying that's your hypothesis, that's what you're positing there, that yeah, okay, yeah, no.
Yes, so well, it was very funny to write this. Okay. Yes. As I think the other twos will not join us. This should be more or less a kickoff meeting. Unfortunately, there are not so many people there.
That's always the problem, right?
But that's yes. Hopefully, this will get more in the future. So at first, thank you for coming. And one positive thing in the beginning, we are a working group now. So we have all necessary votes, and we can act as a working group of the tech app delivery. This was the first thing. The second thing is we and I will send out this after the meeting. One of the first things we have to do as such a working group is we have to vote on chairs and so on, because someone has to drive the progress further. And Alex and me will join the working group, but as tech leads we can only join and cannot lead the working group. So if someone of you is interested in chairing this, please, I will send out something for some nominations, something for nomination, and please comment on this, and then we can vote on this. This was only also one of the reasons why I wanted you both, because you started initiating the working groups and so on, that you will come to the working group, to the first working group meeting, that you get this from the first end.
Your post, that was great. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I'm going to try to write something this week too.
Okay.
Just to give more.
Yes. Furthermore, to the working mode of this working group. So this is more kickoff meeting now. When Alex and me started writing the charter and so on, we thought about making this working group a bit more interactive. So that we invite some external end users, or also vendors, to show their approaches for such things, and that we can it might get a nice community also for end users to get there and try to find out what's up with app delivery and infrastructure delivery. So as I wrote the same thing as I wrote the blog post before, this was a nice discussion, I think, the last 20 minutes. And I think we can have much more of such discussions. So I think this will not be the only way how one could deal with this. I also think there might be people who are doing this in their CI pipelines or whatever. I think there's nothing wrong with it. So, but I think it would be cool if some people would show their approaches, and that we could define some kind of patterns or whatever to get this as to that in a way that we might be able to describe some patterns in a white paper or whatever. But I want the white paper, to be honest, not to be an initial goal of all of this. So it should be more be getting a community, getting ideas, and getting cool solutions for this. And in the end, when we think we have enough information, then just write a white paper. I think this could be very valuable for everyone, but it should not be our primary goal. And furthermore, I also think that we might provide some practical stuff to the end users. So as we are doing it for the potato head at the moment.
Yeah, I was thinking that would be great to leverage that.
So I think we did the first thing in the potato head, that we, let's say, we spin up a kind cluster and deploy the application there. This is a small thing of cooperative delivery. But we could also make this a bit larger. And as far as I've heard yesterday, Microsoft also provides Azure credits for open source projects.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
This could also be a nice.
We have to use Azure.
Hmm?
Then we have to use Azure. Sorry, it's recorded.
We can also use Sivo or whatever. So wherever we have the possibility to deploy and get ideas how to deal with this topic.
There are certain platform-specific ways of doing some of these things that might be valuable to document. For instance, AKS will have the GitOps add-on tool, which is basically just spinning up Flux and everything like that. But at least having that as a way of showing off how to enable, for instance, GitOps, and stuff like that. So there are certain platform-specific things where we could use Azure or whatever to at least get things written down and have screenshots and stuff like that. And obviously everything Azure, I can probably do. I have a lot of credit. I don't need anyone else's credits.
Yes,
Robert,
so,
are you with Microsoft? I saw something.
No, I'm an MVP.
Oh, okay. I saw you on Twitter.
I have way too much credits in Azure. I don't know what to use it for. So if I can use it for something, then that's cool.
I haven't seen GitHub Actions. I mean, they haven't complained. Those K&D things or kind, whatever it's called, it takes a long time. But I don't know what that stuff costs.
AKS in itself just costs the amount of money, whatever type of machine you put it in, and obviously get interconnected or everything. But I was reading up on some of the goals that we kind of set before this meeting, just to have something to think about and contribute with, and things like the second to last point, that give end users IDs an example how they could integrate application infrastructure deployments. There are stuff one can show off with using, for instance, only Terraform for the entire run, both the infrastructure and actual app delivery. And having examples like that, but also having you could use the Flux provider for Terraform, and every time you run up a cluster, it would automatically get pointed towards a Git repository, and then there you have your app delivery. And so there's a lot of those kind of examples that can get written down and conveyed in a ways that people actually understand if it fits their needs. So there's a lot of things like that one can start doing already now, but having a place where this ends up would be great, like having some of these deliverables or whatever you want to call it, if we can kind of like establish some sort of cadence for how, where and how and who should look at it before it gets accepted and all those kind of things. If we have that, I can write a lot.
So I think we will need some kind of Git repository. I think we should use that Git repository for that, as there were lots of discussions regarding such things. And if we find out that this doesn't fit anymore, or that it gets too much to be managed there, then we can put it out in a separate repository organization or whatever. We can define code owners for our cooperative delivery stuff.
Yeah.
And therefore, this should be no problem.
Yeah, if we can, yeah, even just have like deployment examples as a subfolder directory,
Yes.
and have markdown per example
Mm.
or something
That's
simple.
Potato Head. I mean, if you go to the delivery
Yeah.
folder, like one thing we could even, I'll just throw it out there, like we could just say, hey, instead of, let's have a database for every one of these services and demonstrate how to deploy it with a bunch of different things. Like that could even, I don't know, you do it in a fork to begin with, but maybe Potato Head itself can serve several purposes.
I think in the first step, if we have some general information or whatever we want to document somewhere, the app delivery repository would be the correct thing for that. If we have concrete examples, so where we want to deploy an application cooperatively, then we should use the Potato Head and should also define it there, because the Potato Head is also part of the app delivery, and therefore it's also a valid point to store such things, if it's okay for you. So
yeah, well, everything is okay with me, but I also think there might be some value to having practical suggestions. For instance, if you every time you want to deploy a new cluster, there are certain base services that needs to get deployed because that's what you deliver to your people, like Prometheus and stuff. And it would kind of be cool to actually use that as an actual practical example. But obviously, if you point Flux or Argo to a Git repository, it doesn't really matter what's there; it's going to get deployed. So getting to at least that point, it can be very open-ended.
If we are planning to do some delivery examples or whatever, where we need special Git repositories and so on, we have now an organization for the Potato Head, and we can create repositories as far as we want. So if we need to point to some repository, this is also possible, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think you spoke about one very, very important thing. This is a working group for cooperative delivery. So we should provide value to the customers and or to the end users. Sorry, I was in the company scope. And in the end, we want to give them. We want to make their lives easier, and we want to get them in a position that they say, yes, I need a solution, and I can take a look in some repositories of the Git app of the Tag app delivery and find out how to deal with this topic. And in my opinion, it's not really relevant if this is at some cloud provider, if this is a CNCF project or not a CNCF project. It should only bring some value for the end users, because that's what we are here for, to be honest. And so if we have some kind of Terraform example where only Terraform deploys the whole infrastructure and the applications, it's also perfectly fine, because it's a solution. Furthermore, I also created a kind of an example with the Potato Head, Captain, and Terraform, and I will also provide this to the working group at some point in time. So I think there will be many solutions which will be based on Terraform, obviously, because it's one of the tools which is mostly used, I think.
Yeah, and it's one of the tools that people are want to use or are looking into using, and it makes sense to me. And then again, that's kind of what I work with, so maybe that's why it makes sense to me. But there are obviously other things, or there are obviously other ways of kind of getting the entire cooperative delivery point across, and showing how to kind of work with both infrastructure and app delivery in a way that makes it easier for developers. And that doesn't mean it has to be infrastructure as code. There, certain providers have, cloud providers have certain services that is aimed to make it easier for people in this, integrate into things like Kubernetes. So there might be many different kind of things that we can show as practical examples, and they might even be short things. They don't necessarily have to be a extreme long document and complete how to step by step. So there's a lot of things we can do relatively easily, but yeah, if we could get a directory for these and maybe set up the code owners on that directory, or the cooperative delivery working group directory at least.
This is no problem.
Yeah, I would at least help be able to contribute.
Mm-hmm.
And I think things like the other things that have kind of been set as goals are things like landscape radar and the white paper. Yeah, that's a lot of work. We should at least kind of get the ball rolling before starting something like that, or else people gonna get burned out straight off.
So
those examples, I mean, if we contribute a bunch of examples, those will help too. Like even you describing that you like to use Terraform, like you could probably do similar things with Crossplane, and we're all declarative there. At my environment, I had to use a lot of imperative, which is less mature, I would say. So yeah, as we like put these things together, we'll probably come up with a maturity model, like imperative with bash scripts, declarative with Terraform, declarative with Kubernetes resources, and Flux, which is a whole opinionated system. That's almost like a third stage. So if we if we have a bunch of examples, that will help us craft. Okay, we have 10 examples. We're going to bucket them into these 3 categories.
Yeah, and it would also be cool. So at some point, if we see some kind of patterns or how such things could work, we could also write a short blog post or whatever regarding this, as Red Hat did with the operator maturity model or whatever. So it's all things are open, and to get to the point of Robert before, I've wrote one white paper, so the operator white paper, and it's a lot of work, and it's sometimes also a bit cumbersome if you don't have deal too much with the topic. Yeah. So I think we should have a fundamental knowledge about we are talking before we are writing something.
Yeah,
and also try to find out what people need.
And to that point, when the first thing in the list there is vendor and then user into use, do we want to do the same there? Have I kind of look at this as kind of just gathering a lot of data. So we have a directory for those into use. We could start doing that, but I'm not really sure how to go about that. Should we have set questions? Should we go together and create like these are the questions that we want answered from end users and vendors, or is someone going to take lead on that and do that kind of dynamically and just write down at that point would be an article, an interview article. That one is not totally clear to me what's like the best approach. I see the value of it, but it's kind of open-ended, I think.
I think this is also a thing we can discuss a bit later, especially when Alex is here, because I think he brought up this topic.
Yeah.
But I don't think that this is one of the things we have to tackle in the beginning. So in the beginning, I would, for me, it would be really cool if we get some projects and users in there and get some demonstrations or some discussions on how this works in their environment, or where they face problems. So I think the first time it will be much about involvement and getting people in the boat.
So we've said 3 kind of streams. We've got practical gathering up and loosely coupling bunches of examples. We've got gathering feedback from end users on their biggest problems and jobs. And then we have writing an opinionated white paper. And we're saying focus on gathering up examples to start, and then the next two will come.
I would
Yeah.
say that this would be a good idea. Yes.
I mentioned to the DAP-R folks, because that's one of the ones that I've had in mind. Distributed application portable runtime. It's a sidecar which abstracts the underlying services, like, you know, traces and databases and queues. And it's a different, so we talked about imperative, declarative, flux. This is a whole different paradigm where the application developer just declares the capabilities they need and the infrastructure injects it. So that's almost like it's turning everything on its head. That's something that I'm just bringing up, something that I hope to try in the Podtato repos at some point. And I mentioned to them that we're doing this, and maybe they want to, you know, talk to us at some point or evangelize the thing.
That would be great, and that actually kind of solves a lot for developers, I think. It's one of those things where we're gonna probably create something in the future, and I have to talk to developers who aren't really that cloud native. You know, they kind of done a lot of stuff in the past, but not in a real cloud native way. And having something like that would make it a lot more easy for them. So I could just say, here's a kind of framework you can work out of it, you know, write whatever you want, but here's how you get to that. And that helps them. And obviously that makes like the application better suited for these kind of environments. But at the same time, I'm at clients looking over, you know, the clusters of someone that created an application for them. And I see, just today I saw not only the application they created, but also the ingress controller and cert manager and everything like that in one single namespace. Everything they deployed was in one namespace. And I kind of go, but this is not correct. But
Who did it? Did the app team deploy cert manager?
And that's kind of that they have one partner to do their application, which also sets up the cluster. You know, so you don't really have infrastructure people in that sense, and kind of platform people, cloud platform people. And how can we help people that are in like this scenario where they kind of do the entire thing? How do we help them understand why it's not great to have one namespace for everything that you do, and things like that. And I think there's a lot of stuff like that we can kind of get across as well. Just again, going back to the goals where we're be written about kind of who the key stakeholders are, and specifically the CKAD, the developer part, not the administrative part, but the developer. How can I help them do better job with cloud native app delivery?
So one thing Aris brought up when we had the idea for this working group was also kind of getting app delivery ready Kubernetes cluster without injection and so on.
Yeah.
So I think this is partly the thing you discussed now, that you want to define your that you want to have some process in place for defining your Kubernetes cluster, for maintaining it and so on, and make it as simple as possible for application developers to get their applications on there.
That's it. So that's also, I'm just writing down some stuff here, but I've been thinking about this a little bit recently too. So developers and operators, I guess the past 10, 20 years have gotten pretty agile. Infrastructure my hypothesis at least is that it's because, we used to just put servers into racks. Like it wasn't like a real-time kind of operation. Is one of the themes bringing infrastructure development into the cloud? Like, of course, at Azure, they're building, cloud native services, but like out at the customer, do they understand what modern infrastructure is, that it's all software defined, that it's dynamic, that it should be agile? Like, do we have that might be beyond our scope. That's what I'm kind of asking. Like, do we have a remit to educate and upskill infrastructure folks from being sysadmins to being, developers?
So if it fits to the topic area of the working group, yes. because
Okay.
we are cloud guys. Therefore, we should help them to get to the cloud.
Us cloud people.
Yes.
I'd love insights on that, because yeah, I'm talking to like infrastructure. I don't want to scare them. I want to bring them along in the journey. But yeah, how do we do that nicely?
I think there's a lot of things there we could do that would help a lot of people. And you know, I'm based in Norway, and I work with a lot of like public sector, governmental big things, and they're starting to get into like their own private cloud idea, and they're doing a fine job at it. You know, obviously a lot of people needs to get, you know, get up to speed on certain things, but things like what does a cluster, like a cluster look like when it's deployed for a developer? If a developer needs a cluster, what does that look like? What's that base cluster? And a lot of them are just thinking, yeah, well, it's a cluster, you know, on VMware or in Azure or whatever they use as the backbone. Just give them a cluster, and it's like, well, what about monitoring? What about policy? What about the network policy, security things? There's a lot of things there that kind of needs to be present. And I think getting the point across that a base cluster is not just Kubernetes, for instance, could be a thing we could try to get across, and that would enable developers to safely deliver the application, you know, to a cluster that's actually ready for it, and not just, you know, open, you know, playing field.
I love that. Yeah. Like force them to think from a dev's viewpoint. The job isn't done because you installed a server with Microsoft Windows Server on it. Like,
yeah,
the dev needs more than that to act. And yeah, if we can, that's why I was actually bringing up serverless before, because like maybe instead of thinking from the bottom up, like I need to provide compute and storage and network and all these things, we should think from the top down. Like my developers want serverless or something like that.
Yeah.
Now, how do I, you know, implement to meet that kind of thing? But, and that ties into what you just said. That's what I was getting at. Like, if we can help infrastructure folks think like, hey, the app devs, what do they really want? Then that will transform their whole, you know. So yeah, that would be cool. Let's keep that in mind if we can facilitate that through here. Maybe like educate, you know how to write bash scripts, now do it in Go or something.
But sometimes it's a good start to do this in bash.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah.
Too much stuff in bash.
What do we want to kind of set off as, you know, first order of business? Like what do we want to, where do we want to start with this? Do we just, you know, fly off the seat of the pants type thing, or do we want to kind of set up some you know, deliverables to next meeting, or, you know, do we action items?
So what I'd like what would be cool for the next 1-2 meetings, what would be that we get some kind of examples for this, so that someone could be there and try to show how such an approach could look like, and also that we get more traction into the working group, that we get more people working in the working group, so that we have something to show and something which enables people to do something. And I think we can always work on code examples and whatever.
That is kind of the at least for me the easy thing, because that's what I work with, so I can just copy paste stuff. Not really, but yeah, yeah. I didn't have edit access for the docs. All right, cool.
So yeah, by the way, that's what I'm going to do. I'm taking away, contribute some examples. I'm going to have some time next week. So maybe when I'm working on Potato Head, I'll try to integrate Dapper or something in one of them. I'm also going to work on a blog just to kind of drum up. I don't know. I'm not that popular or anything, but like just start, whatever conversation.
Always funny
Yeah.
to write blogs. We could also publish blogs under the name, under the working group, I think.
Okay.
And at least as the
Like
tag.
them, we'll go from there.
If yeah, that's probably also a kind of better way, because you kind of might get some CNCF muscles underneath everything. But there are other venues where one could, post stuff and probably get some people in, just, as being part of the GitOps working group. Open GitOps has a webpage where you can put a blog, and we could discuss things around GitOps and kind of get into this topic and ask if people want to contribute their ideas to how to, and kind of get people in that way from that angle. I can try and invite certain people
Yes.
in, some of the MVP people that I know that do a lot of Kubernetes stuff. Do kind of the same work that I do, so hopefully they have valuable input.
Yeah, it would be interesting if there's GitOps people that are using GitOps for like a combo of app and dev. Like, is there somebody? App and infra. Are there people that are deploying a whole cluster or deploying a cert manager or whatever? Like, that would be interesting.
Yes, I have a client that I talked about using Crossplane for infrastructure, and then directly tie that into GitOps. So that might be a future showcase from an end user, but it's a big change. Right now they're doing just normal Terraform, and everything is done through pipelines for infrastructure, and then they also do that for app delivery. So obviously I try to get them into the GitOps space there, and then that kind of just went on, and we're talked about Crossplane and other solutions like that, and that might be a really cool example in the future. But right now, but even there, just the fact that they're going to go from doing CI/CD based deployment of applications, of their application, to probably using either Flux or Argo CD to actually enable GitOps and do everything there. And it's a SaaS solution and everything like that. So it's one of the bigger ones in that area in Norway. So that might be a cool end user into you, for instance. So
yeah,
these things present themselves.
I mean, Crossplane. It feels like Crossplane is a contrast to Terraform. Like Crossplane is the Kubernetes resource model, and you have Terraform as those would be, having those two to contrast.
Yes, but it would be cool to see such things as. What I could also contribute is as I said, I created some kind of showcase for Captain Terraform. I could show this in one of the next meetings. I'm not sure when the next one will be, because I'm on holidays, on vacation now.
I love that, but Captain is like such an event. It's like a different paradigm, by the way. It's like if there's imperative, declarative, Flux, but then Captain is event driven. Like that's a whole different. So there's more now.
Yes, but in the end, you can integrate everything you want. So you could also deploy your infrastructure via Crossplane or whatever. So for me, it was more because we use it obviously in the company, and therefore. Like a glue after. Yes, but this is one thing I can contribute in one of the next meetings. We should only try to find out if we find someone for the next meeting to present something, and also try to announce this properly.
Yeah, what kind of things do we want presented?
Such solutions. So that's pretty open, I think. So if we think in a first step, it would be a good idea to deploy a Kubernetes cluster with crossplane and deploy applications on it. It's also it's a solution. So I think we are in a process of information gathering as we defined before.
Yeah, and even just like one of the things like the examples that we talked about and the end user interviews, but also just the entire the goal of capturing the current practices and the landscape. It's like what are people actually doing? Should we create a questionnaire that we kind of distribute out to see if kind of results we are getting, or so something like that we can do, and then do a write-up.
This would also be a good idea. Yes. It would also give enough material for blog posters.
Yeah.
So I think there's much to write.
By the way, we didn't even mention, but one of the reasons I'm particularly interested is service binding. Like that's to me one of the issues that I've had, and I've seen it where I work right now, is you get the service deployed, but then how do you get credentials? And it was so nice in PCF and in Cloud Foundry and things like that. So that, I don't know, that might that might tie into us too eventually.
Yes, but there is also some kind of a service catalog in Kubernetes, I think.
Yeah, but everybody's kind of moved away from, I feel like, open service broker and to operators, for better or worse. I don't know. That's what I see.
Yes, but this would also be ideas we things we could cover in this step.
Exactly.
This thing, because defining a database via service binding is also kind of cooperative delivery.
For sure. That's why I'm mentioning that. Yeah, and actually that makes me like open service broker. The very fact that that's interesting to our group that fell out of favor.
Yeah, just having this is what people what kind of looked like where we were going, and then all of a sudden something else came, and then why is that now the preferred way of doing that, and stuff like that. That's a good exercise just to understand what kind of drives how people want to work with these things.
Thomas, can you make the notes publicly editable, like the other
yes,
drop
yes.
it?
Yeah, I requested access. I didn't.
Yes, I will do this shortly after the meeting. Yes.
Deal.
This was the first notes document I created, so I need some more practice, I think. So, okay, I think the hour is almost over. So, yes, I will write out something for the voting or at least for the nominations for the chairs for this working group. Furthermore, we should try to get some people to the next meeting and to let's try to find one who wants to present something. And
if I'm ready, I will. I can't promise.
And also, I think Hong Chao said he wants to do something with kubewheeler and the open application model.
That's also like interesting thing to get more information out on about, because I rarely see enough about that.
I think Alibaba is very involved in that. Is Hong Chao from Alibaba?
Yes.
Yes. And I've been looking at they got a Terraform operator that they're kind of doing. So I was kind of interested in, because it actually does what I wanted to do, which is point to where Terraform is, and then stuff happens. Not, So that was kind of cool. But I kind of looked through there, and yeah, it's mostly China-based, Alibaba people that are doing things there. That might change if the word kind of gets out on some of the things that are laying around there, because there's a lot of cool things there, and it's just sad that everything kind of gets separated because of things like that. Kind of gets stuck.
Microsoft is the one who created that OAM model to begin with. They don't seem that involved anymore, but that might be, you can figure that out.
And that might just be because of stuff to do. There's a lot of things to do for a lot of people these days, and it can't be part of every single project. And if whoever was the one that wanted to help with that kind of fell out or got too much stuff to do, then all of a sudden the entire company is gone from there. It's the same with my company. My company is on a lot of things, and that's just because of me. If I stop doing those things, then it's
That's so interesting, because I brought up Crossplane as basically at my company, which I might not be staying at that much longer, but we were having trouble scaling. We're having trouble scaling infrastructure services, and so I brought up Crossplane. But that was the fear. Also, was like, well, that's interesting, but who's going to maintain that? Like, there's a lot of I guess that goes back to kind of this theme of infrastructure development is changing, and that makes people nervous. It's hard to. How do we make them feel better?
Yeah, and a lot of these things are defined in such a way that you should be able to just change how you do this, with not a big issue. Like, you could, if you have things in Terraform now and you want to do something else, you can do that. You can do the move. You're not stuck there just because that's what you started with. And but people fear change. So,
well, you also got to you got to teach the infrastructure devs the difference between interfaces and implementations. You can't have I 1000% agree, and that's one of the reasons why I'm just look at the interface, and then you could do whatever implementation you want underneath. I've seen companies, they don't even realize hey, you changed the URL, you just messed up all my Docker image. You just messed up all my Docker files. You got to realize there's a public API there, so that I would add that in. But I love that idea. Hey, platform is an interface. Do whatever you want behind.
Yeah. There's probably going to be more about that later on, but obviously we're still in kind of, even though DevOps have been a thing for a long while, there's few of us ops that are devs, so to speak. So, there's still that. And, that's why Terraform is popular, because it's not actually programming. It's very easy to read, even for those who don't understand. But obviously, as soon as it gets complicated with loops and doing logic things, they get, they fall off. But that's why I have a job. But for me, I couldn't care less if it was written in Go or Terraform or C# or whatever. I can still read it and I can still edit that. But there are few people that work with DevOps that actually are DevOps. They're more ops, but they kind of have to do YAML stuff or something, whatever that's called, YAML ops. So getting some of these examples out there and kind of show that it's not really that hard, some of these things. It is actually kind of easy. You just need to sit down and experiment a little bit, and you'll find a way, and it does work. So I think is that there's a lot of value in this working group and the data that's going to get collected.
I also think so, yes.
Just the ideas. I mean, what you make me think of the way you describe YAML is we need low code for infra.
And that's sort of what Terraform kind of is, because you say name equals this. All right, cool. Where do you want it to go? Location equal this, and there you go.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully it goes there. That will be better. But at the same time, people are just stuck in it's very obvious in Norway. I'm not sure how it is other places, but in Norway, we the average IT person works in with 15-year-old technology in mind, that they can't get out, they can't keep up with everything. Again, great for me. I got a job forever, but but helping people understand these things is, I think, is vital for at least here in my country, for things to move on and be better.
That's a really helpful observation. Yeah, so we should, as we develop these examples, make sure they're accessible at all levels.
Yes. I think this is really important, especially for infrastructure people or whomever, to see how the cloud and how infrastructure is code and whatever could make their lives easier.
Yeah. I keep on bringing up the example where I did something for a customer. It was Greenfield Deployment, and the old service provider didn't actually tell us what IP ranges we could use or not. And we sent IP ranges and they said, yeah, that sounds good, I think. And then we deployed everything and it turns out it was overlapping stuff and different end. So took 30 minutes and I brought down the entire Azure environment and up again. We redeployed everything because it was, you know, it was Terraform. So I don't care what's going down. It's going to come up again. Just kill it all. And it's really easy. Yeah. But you know, that's why infrastructure as code. That's why you don't do things manually. If you did that manually, you know, good luck. You know, getting everything off those virtual networks and, you know, cleaning up all that.
This can take a while, yes.
Yeah, it's like 2 months to set up, and then you got that. And, okay, I have 4 months to clean up, and then you'll never hit the production deadline. So, yeah.
Yes, and currently I'm teaching a class at university in infrastructure as code and a bit in microservices and so on. And it's kind of funny if you tell them, yes, and if you want to spin up 500 virtual machines in Azure, in AWS, just do it. But in about 10 or 15 years ago, you would have ordered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 servers. You would have to wait for 1 or 2 months, and would have to
just like 10 or 15 years ago. Yeah, it's crazy.
So this is kind of funny in today's world because it's done in a very short time, everything.
And even when I started, even though, you know, VMs and stuff like that was. All right, cool. Thanks, Josh.
But yeah, good to chat with you. I'll talk with you offline.
Yeah, bye.
Online.
I was just saying that even not that long ago, I haven't been in IT for ages, but like 7 years ago, you know, even then, having things locally and not out in public clouds or something that scales that amount, you know, would mean that, all right, we got to a certain point, but at a certain point, because like the machines, we don't have any more resources, so we actually need to order machines. And then the quick change, well, yeah, it's gonna be a couple of weeks because we need to get the machines in. So everything like that now, just the way you can scale, it's really awesome.
So it's also funny from a kind of a mindset perspective, because I talked to students and we created some kind of lab, and I said after the whole lab, yes, and now drop your virtual machines, and they said, why should we drop it? Because you don't need it anymore. So yeah, and just that the way that you can now just use and then delete when you're done. You know, both to save cost and that way of thinking in a more, you know, stateless manner, so to speak, you know, really helps, you know, getting progress. If you can just repeat it and then change whatever actually created it, get so much more done than, you know, watching out and building that server piece by piece over a couple of months. It's silly that we had to do that before. Yes.
Yeah. In retrospect, it's kind of that's just weird. But yeah. All right. Cool.
Otherwise, today we know how such things work and why we are automating such things.
Yeah. Yeah, but automation, you know, that's great drug to be on. Automation. Yes. Cool. You're gonna open the docs doc. Yeah. All right. Okay. I can put in some stuff
the next
there
10 minutes, hopefully. Yes.
All right. Cool.
Okay.
Then good first meeting.
Yes, I also think so. Yes. That's pretty nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Then have a nice day.
You too. Bye.